September 1978 marked another unforgettable chapter in the history of bodybuilding. The stage was set at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Columbus, Ohio, a place that was quickly becoming a true temple of the sport. The venue was packed to the brim, tickets sold out, and the air buzzing with anticipation. For many fans, it wasn't just about watching another competition. It was about being part of a historic moment that could change the course of bodybuilding forever. This was the third year in a row that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jim Lorimer teamed up to organize the event. Lorimer's experience combined with Arnold's charisma and vision brought a whole new dimension to the Olympia. Fans weren't just watching muscles on display. They were witnessing a show where every detail had been carefully thought out. From the lighting to the way athletes were introduced, everything screamed professionalism and a drive for greatness. By 1978, the Olympia couldn't even be compared to its early years. The event had evolved dramatically and was now treated with the same respect as other major sporting competitions. This growth showed how bodybuilding was carving out its space internationally, moving past the curiosity label to establish itself as a serious, highly competitive sport. Another sign of the event's importance was the heavy media presence. Local newspapers, bodybuilding magazines, and even international TV crews were on site to capture every moment. That coverage transformed the Olympia into a global spectacle, carrying its image far beyond the walls of that Ohio auditorium. The message was clear: bodybuilding had officially become part of the world's sports culture. Expectations were sky-high. The crowd wanted to see who would rise above, what surprises might unfold on stage, and whether the reigning champ would keep his crown. Fans roared, photographers scrambled for the best angles, and organizers knew they had to deliver a show worthy of the Olympia's growing reputation. Everything pointed to that night being far more than just another competition. Inside the auditorium, the atmosphere felt like a sold-out concert or the nail-biting final of a championship game. Sweat, spotlights, camera flashes, and thunderous applause created an almost tangible energy. For the athletes, stepping onto that stage meant more than competing. It was a chance to make history, earn recognition, and maybe even secure immortality within the sport. And so the 1978 Mr. Olympia began, an event that wouldn't just crown new champions, but also reaffirm the importance of aesthetics, discipline, and raw determination in bodybuilding. The question hanging in the air was, who would shine brightest under those lights and claim the throne? The '78 Olympia also introduced a structure that highlighted just how far the sport had come. For the first time, fans really noticed how weight divisions helped showcase different physiques. The contest was split into two main classes, up to 200 pounds, lightweight, and over 200 pounds, heavyweight. That setup made the battles more balanced while building anticipation for the final showdown between the division winners. This split also gave athletes with different styles their own spotlight. In the lightweight class, symmetry, balance, and razor-sharp definition ruled. In the heavyweight class, it was all about sheer mass and density, physiques that left jaws on the floor. Fans naturally picked sides, some drawn to the beauty of proportion, others to the shock factor of size. The crowd was split, but that only added fuel to the excitement. In total, 13 athletes took the stage in Columbus. Each represented years of sacrifice, strict diets, and training that pushed human limits. For fans, it wasn't just a lineup of competitors. It was a showcase of personalities from around the globe, each carrying unique stories and massive ambitions. The Olympia of 1978 was more than a muscle contest. It was a snapshot of bodybuilding's growing diversity on the world stage. Another standout detail was the prize money, $26,000 in total. That figure sent a strong message. The sport was no longer just about passion. Bodybuilding was entering the path of true professionalism. Competitors weren't only fighting for glory anymore. They were also building careers. The flow of the event kept fans hooked. First, each division had its moment in the spotlight, with solo poses and head-to-head comparisons. Then, tension mounted until it peaked in the ultimate battle, the fight for the overall title, where only one man would walk away as Mr. Olympia. The formula worked perfectly, keeping the audience glued from start to finish and delivering moments of pure electricity. This format mirrored the vision of the organizers. The Olympia had to be more than a contest. It had to be a show with a clear beginning, middle, and end. That narrative gave the night an epic feel, turning each stage of the competition into a chapter in its story. From the first pose down to the announcement of the overall champ, everything was designed to keep the spotlight burning on Columbus, Ohio. And you, if you'd been sitting in that audience, would you have leaned toward the elegant aesthetics of the lightweights or the raw impact of the heavyweights? When Frank Zane walked into Columbus, he was the man to beat. After taking the title in '77, he carried the weight of expectation on his shoulders, along with the sting of criticism. Plenty of people still doubted that victory, claiming he just wasn't big enough to be Mr. Olympia. But Zane didn't flinch. He knew his edge wasn't about matching the mass monsters pound for pound. It was about proving that bodybuilding was also art, symmetry, and proportion. While other competitors were chasing every extra inch of muscle, Zane went the opposite direction. He showed up even lighter than the year before, but his conditioning bordered on flawless. Every fiber, every detail of his physique looked carved with surgical precision. His mission was clear: to prove that true excellence wasn't measured only in size, but in the harmony of the whole package. That bold choice to value quality over quantity split opinions. Many thought there was no way he could repeat his 1977 win going up against powerhouses like Robby Robinson and Callender. But Zane trusted the impact his razor-sharp conditioning would have under the lights. He knew that in the judges' eyes, fine details could outweigh the biggest biceps in the room. Zane's style mirrored his meticulous personality. He wasn't chasing records in the weight room or trying to train with the same brute intensity as his rivals. Instead, he focused on technical training, carefully planned posing, and preparation more like an artist sculpting his masterpiece than a warrior going to battle. That quiet discipline gave him the confidence to step up against giants. For the audience, his approach was eye-opening. Until then, many viewed the Olympia as the stage for the biggest muscle mass on the planet. But Zane was about to prove there was room for a different kind of champion, one defined by refined aesthetics. That shift didn't just raise his status. It nudged the sport itself toward redefining its own standards. Think about it. If you'd been in that crowd, would you have bet on Zane that night? Next to those massive physiques, he could look almost fragile. But the moment he stepped under the stage lights, everything changed. His symmetry and definition created a magnetic presence that erased doubts and demanded respect. The 1978 Olympia became the ultimate test of that philosophy. Zane wasn't just defending a title, he was defending an idea. The idea that muscle could also be art, and that bodybuilding didn't have to choose between power and beauty. It could fuse both into something greater. In the under 200-pound division, the lightweights gave fans a true lesson in aesthetics. The undisputed star was Frank Zane, who lived up to all the hype with a flawless presentation. His extreme definition and near-mathematical proportions made every pose feel like a piece of art. Every detail of his body was fine-tuned to impress the judges and mesmerize the crowd. Once again, Zane proved he didn't need size to stand tall. Right behind him, Boyer Coe had one of his best showings at the Olympia. Known for his complete and solid physique, he brought the house down with an abdominal shot that earned a standing ovation. His stage presence oozed confidence and technique, cementing his reputation as one of the most respected athletes in the class. Fans could see he was on the rise and destined to climb higher in future contests. Danny Padilla made his Olympia debut and didn't disappoint. At just 5 feet 2 inches, about 1.57 meters, he lived up to his nickname, the Giant Killer. His body was a showcase of symmetry and muscle density, balanced from head to toe. Still, this time his torso came in a bit softer than expected, which left him in third place. Even so, his performance proved he had the potential to etch his name among the legends. Fourth place went to Ed Corney, a true posing icon. Even without cracking the top spots, his routine was a show on its own. Corney had the rare ability to turn posing into poetry, mixing charisma and fluidity like no one else. The audience went wild for him, showing that his respect and admiration went far beyond the scoreboard. For many, watching Corney perform was a privilege all by itself. In fifth place came Tony Emmett, carrying the flag for England on the international stage. He displayed solid muscular structure and good conditioning, but couldn't quite edge out the night's top names. Still, his Olympia debut marked the beginning of a respected run. Behind him were Mohamed McAway, Bill Grant, and Albert Beckles, each bringing their own story, talent, and contribution to the contest. McAway, for instance, was known for his sleek, almost feline-like physique, but this time he wasn't at his sharpest. Bill Grant, with his eye-popping biceps, was held back by underdeveloped calves, and Albert Beckles, the seasoned veteran, had impressive arms but lacked the refinement to climb higher in the rankings. Even so, each of them helped make the lightweight division intense and unforgettable. That class proved once again that size isn't everything at the Olympia. Proportion, definition, and symmetry carried as much weight as raw mass. For fans, the under 200-pound division was like watching different interpretations of physical perfection go head-to-head. If the lightweights captivated with aesthetics and detail, the heavyweights wowed with sheer visual impact. This was where the crowd expected to see true giants of flesh and muscle, radiating power with every move. The undeniable standout was Robby Robinson, the Black Prince. In 1978, he was in his prime, dense muscle, deep cuts, and a physique that screamed hard work. Fresh off wins at the Night of Champions and the World Cup, Robinson stepped on stage with champion-level confidence. His presence was magnetic, massive arms, a shredded midsection, and a level of muscle maturity that only comes with time. Unlike the year before, when he seemed more restrained, in '78 Robinson delivered with full professionalism and energy. Every pose was precise, and the crowd could feel they were watching an athlete at his very best. For many, he was the clear favorite of the division. But Robinson wasn't alone. Roy Callender made his Olympia debut and instantly turned heads. Thick, with a chest and back that dominated the stage, he showed a compact, powerful physique. His conditioning was razor-sharp, and even as a newcomer, he looked right at home among the elites. The audience could tell Callender wasn't just there to fill the lineup. He was there to compete. Another crowd favorite was Kalman Szkalak. With a physique that reminded many of Arnold Schwarzenegger's glory days, Szkalak had wide pecs, massive arms, and electrifying stage presence. The crowd went wild at every pose, and plenty believed he could shock the judges. His energy and classic look made him one of the most celebrated athletes of the night. In fourth place, Dennis Tenorino showed clear progress from the year before. Already a respected veteran with titles like Mr. America and Mr. Universe under his belt, in 1978 he brought deeper cuts, broader shoulders, and a tighter midsection. He didn't reach the podium, but proved he still had plenty left to give to the sport. Representing Australia, Roger Walker also showed marked improvement. Bigger and leaner than in 1977, his prep work was evident. Still, against such stacked competition, he had to settle for fifth place. Even so, his presence added to the Olympia's international flair, showing how talent was pouring in from all over the world. The heavyweight class was a true showcase of power and size, with each athlete presenting their own version of what it meant to be a bodybuilding giant. Beyond the lights and applause, though, the 1978 Olympia was also about the human stories that gave the show even more depth. Robby Robinson, for example, nearly didn't make it to the stage. On the trip, he developed a serious infection that forced him to rely on oxygen. Many assumed he'd bow out, but his determination won out. Even weakened, he competed, showing heart and grit, proving why he was considered one of the greats of his time. Danny Padilla also left a mark outside the judging rounds. Known as the Giant Killer, he showed that class and kindness are part of what makes a true champion. When a shy young fan with communication difficulties approached him asking for his warm-up jacket, Padilla didn't hesitate. He handed it over as a gift. It was an unforgettable moment for the boy and further cemented Padilla's reputation as one of the most approachable, beloved athletes. Ed Corney, even without a top placing, reaffirmed his status as one of the greatest posers in history. His routine drew loud cheers, with many fans calling it one of the highlights of the night. Corney had the rare ability to turn every pose into art, keeping him legendary regardless of rankings. And Bill Grant, with his outgoing personality, brought fun to the stage. His massive biceps and charisma lit up the crowd, especially with his girlfriend cheering him on at every move. Albert Beckles, the quieter veteran, didn't have the same flair, but earned respect with his longevity and impressive arms. Each, in their own way, added layers of excitement to a night that would be remembered as one of the Olympia's most vibrant editions. Those backstage moments revealed that the Olympia wasn't just about muscles. It was a gathering of personalities. Some athletes were laser-focused, others joked around, and a few even used the stage as a platform for protests or statements of character. That mix of attitudes made the spectacle richer and more unpredictable. The crowd, watching every detail, wasn't focused only on the official comparisons. They also soaked in the interactions between athletes, the laughter, the quick chats, the little gestures of camaraderie during breaks. Those moments humanized the giants on stage, showing that beyond the muscle they carried stories, feelings, and even vulnerability. These small narratives helped build the mystique of the 1978 Olympia. They showed the contest wasn't just about who would lift the trophy, but also about who would win over the hearts of fans. At the end of the day, a champion's legacy isn't measured only in titles, but in the impact left on the people who followed them. Of course, no major sporting event is free of controversy, and the '78 Olympia had its own. The most explosive moment came when judges placed Kalman Szkalak 5th overall. The crowd, who had gone wild for his routine and saw him as one of the night's highlights, erupted in boos. The audience made it clear they disagreed, filling the auditorium with tension. Szkalak didn't hold back. Outraged by the result, he staged a protest right there on stage. Walking to the center, he stretched his arms wide, crossed his legs, and tilted his head to the side. It was the now famous crucifix pose, a dramatic gesture symbolizing his crucifixion by the judges. The move went down as one of the most iconic protests in Olympia history. That act split opinions. Some saw it as a brave display of defiance against what he considered injustice. Others thought it was an overreaction that clashed with the spirit of competition. Either way, it fired up the audience and turned the night into a roller coaster of emotions, where rivalries went far beyond just comparing physiques. Backstage, tensions were just as heated. Athletes and coaches debated fiercely. Some believed the judges got it right, pointing out that Szkalak still needed refinement. Others argued he was punished for having challenged the IFBB system in previous contests. The chatter revealed that behind the physiques on stage, politics and backroom dynamics also played a role in shaping careers. The atmosphere grew so thick it seemed the contest might spiral out of control. But, as always, the passion of the fans and the mutual respect among most athletes kept things from escalating further. Still, the feeling of injustice lingered, and many left the auditorium talking more about the controversy than the actual title. That explosion of emotions proved the Olympia had already become more than just a bodybuilding contest. It was a stage for drama, rivalries, and even rebellion. Szkalak's protest, whether admired or criticized, entered history as a symbol of bodybuilding's unpredictable and deeply human side. At the Olympia, muscles weren't enough. Athletes had to face pressure, judgment, and sometimes decisions that were hard to swallow. And you, in Szkalak's place, would you have accepted the result in silence, or made a bold statement in front of thousands? Then came the night's biggest moment, the battle for the overall title. This was where the winners of each division clashed to decide who would be crowned Mr. Olympia 1978. On one side, Frank Zane, the embodiment of refined aesthetics and razor-sharp definition. On the other, Robby Robinson, a powerhouse of brute force, dense muscle, and overwhelming presence. It wasn't just a contest. It was two philosophies of bodybuilding colliding under the Columbus lights. The contrast was obvious from the start. Zane looked like a classical sculpture, mathematically precise proportions, every cut illuminated to perfection. Robinson, by contrast, radiated dominance with his sheer maturity of muscle and commanding presence. It was like comparing the balance of a Renaissance masterpiece with the grandeur of a colossal monument. The question buzzing through the hall was, which vision of bodybuilding would prevail that night? The crowd was split down the middle. Thunderous cheers erupted whenever Robinson hit a pose, celebrating his mass and power. Then waves of applause rose when Zane stepped forward, fans mesmerized by his detail and symmetry. That divide electrified the room, each pose swinging the suspense back and forth. The tension was so thick you could almost feel it in the air. And then, before the final announcement, a gesture melted the tension. Robinson, acknowledging the level of the battle, embraced Zane on stage. The audience erupted in warm applause, recognizing a moment of respect and sportsmanship. More than rivals, they stood as colleagues bound by a shared passion, the art of bodybuilding. When the final decision was announced, the auditorium erupted. Frank Zane was officially crowned a two-time Mr. Olympia. His bold strategy of prioritizing aesthetics and razor-sharp conditioning over sheer size had paid off for the second year in a row. Robinson, though once again finishing second, walked away with even more respect, not just for his physique, but for the way he carried himself and handled the loss. The podium was rounded out by Callender in third, an impressive debut that proved he was a force on the world stage. Boyer secured fourth, solidifying his place among the best, while Kalman Szkalak, despite the controversies and the crowd's support, finished fifth. Every placing carried its own weight, but without question, the night belonged to Zane. That final showdown of 1978 didn't just crown a champion. It symbolized a shift in the sport's values. Aesthetics versus mass, proportion versus volume, and that night, aesthetics came out on top. The 1978 Mr. Olympia didn't end only with a champion, it ended with a message. For the second straight year, Zane proved that symmetry, proportion, and flawless conditioning could outshine brute size. He showed the bodybuilding world that being big wasn't enough. You had to be balanced, refined, and stage-ready down to the smallest detail. That philosophy cemented what many call the era of aesthetics. Zane's victory set a new benchmark for Olympia contenders. From then on, anyone dreaming of the Sando had to show up shredded. Deep cuts, extreme definition, and picture-perfect proportions. The phrase whispered among fans and athletes alike became simple. If you want to win the Olympia, you've got to show up ripped. That standard shaped training, prep, and judging for years to come. But the 1978 event went beyond physiques and judging. It proved the Olympia had evolved into a cultural spectacle. There was drama, with Szkalak's protest. There were rivalries, like the eternal clash of aesthetics versus mass. And there were icons, athletes who stood out not only for their physiques, but also for their character and presence. Frank Zane left Columbus as the very image of harmony and control. Bodybuilding is art, sculpted with discipline and patience. On the other hand, Robinson and Callender embodied brute strength and density, showcasing the raw power that continued to captivate crowds. That contrast enriched the sport, giving fans the thrill of watching two worlds collide on the same stage. The legacy of 1978 also highlighted how storytelling had become central to the Olympia. Fans weren't just watching poses. They were watching a narrative unfold. The reigning champion defending his throne, the rookies trying to break through, the wronged athlete staging a protest, and the veterans proving their staying power. It was a drama worthy of the spotlight, filled with characters and moments that would echo through bodybuilding history. This chapter also underscored the pivotal role of Columbus, Ohio, and the partnership between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jim Lorimer. They showed they could elevate the Olympia year after year, paving the way for it to grow into a global phenomenon. What began as a niche contest was now a worldwide event drawing international attention. Looking back, the 1978 Olympia wasn't just memorable, it was a turning point. It redefined judging criteria, elevated the show itself, and created symbols that still inspire athletes and fans to this day. And that brings us to the end of our journey through the 1978 Mr. Olympia, one of the most iconic chapters in bodybuilding history. A year of drama, rivalries, controversy, and above all, Frank Zane's crowning as the ultimate symbol of aesthetics in the sport. But now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this Olympia? Would you have handed the win to Zane or to Robinson? If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to smash that like button. It helps the channel grow. And if you want to support even more, consider becoming a member of the channel. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episodes in this epic series. We've got plenty more history to uncover, and you won't want to miss a single moment. And of course, the comments are open. Tell us, what was your favorite part of the 1978 Olympia? Do you agree with the judge's decision, or would you have scored it differently? Your take always makes the conversation richer. Before you go, check out the video popping up on your screen right now. Another can't miss episode in our Mr. Olympia series. I'm sure you'll love keeping the marathon going with us. And for those who really stuck around until the end, here's a little game. Drop the word supplement in the comments. Only those who made it this far will get it, and I'll know who the true champions of our community are. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. I'll see you in the next video as we continue exploring every detail of the greatest stage in bodybuilding history. See you there.